지속 가능한 수산자원 관리.
Hello, today I'm going to talk to you about sustainable fisheries resource management in Korea. My name is Park Ki-won, working at NIFS. My presentation is comprised of two parts. The first part is related to the coastal waters in Korea, and the second part of the presentation will be presented by Dr. Kim Eun-jung about the distant waters. As for the fisheries resource management in Korean coastal waters, I will walk you through the stock status, history of fisheries management, fisheries resource survey, and also stock assessment and management, followed by new paradigm for fisheries resources. So 5 subtopics. As I said to you in the beginning, there are 2 parts under the big framework of Korean fisheries management. At NIFS, we have function that is responsible for coastal waters and another function responsible for distant waters. And as for the coastal waters, the tasks include Korean EEZ, exclusive economic zones, and also we take care of the fisheries and resources in the coastal waters. And also we do our management in accordance with the Korean Act and policy established and enacted in Korea. And as for the function responsible for distant waters, the tasks are related to high sea and the fishing activities, especially in the high sea. And in comparison to fishing activities in coastal waters, there is a limited activity regarding fisheries and specific resources in the distant waters, but still we do have the fisheries management regarding the distant waters, and we work closely together with the Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries and also the Regional Fisheries Management Organization, in short RFMO. Now I will talk to you about the Korean coastal waters. The stock status in the Korean coastal waters, you can see on this slide that there are various fisheries and species, about up to 140 species that are available as fisheries resources, and the fishing activities take place in diverse forms. With such diversity in the fishing activities and the diverse fishing species, many gears are used. As you may well know, in the case of Korea, we are close, our waters are close to the waters of China and Japan. So 3 countries share the fisheries resources, and the specific situation facing South Korea is that we do not have access to any information in North Korea. Therefore, even though we are situated on the Korean Peninsula, we do not have information on North Korea. And now moving on to the 2020 status, the total catch of coastal and offshore was the 932,000 or so metric ton. This does not include any aquaculture catch. It only includes the catch from the sea and the waters. You can see that the total catch is kind of on a downward trend. And if you look at the line graph at the right bottom, this is the line graph regarding the 5 key species and the total catch. As you can see, compared to the past, the production volume has been falling. And especially however, as for the anchovy, it is on the contrary direction, which is rising. Now, I'd like to talk to you about the history of fisheries management in Korea back in the 1960s. Coastal fishery and aquaculture industries have experienced and enjoyed the rapid growth. Right after the Korean War, that was the time when Korea was seeing the booming industries across the nation. However, back then in the 1960s, we didn't have a serious, we didn't consider much about how to approach the industry and so on, but the rapid growth was there. And in the 1970s, fishing grounds started to expand, And also there was increased interest in the fisheries resource management. And also artificial reefs and seed release projects started in the 1970s. And also from the 1980s, the catch per unit of fishing effort, in short, we call it CPUE, it has been decreasing in Korean waters. And also we saw a decline in the CPUE. And also there have been a number of projects that have been implemented in order to increase the production from the marine ranching area. As I said to you back in the past, more focus was focused on the expansion of the industry and the expansion and promotion of fishing activities. Now into the 1990s, there started a number of resources and surveys to prepare management measures. And also the means and the approach to the fisheries management has been enhanced and introduced. And also the researches and studies have been conducted by a research vessel in full scale. And also the density and the distribution of fisheries resources in the coastal waters has been looked at in order to come up with the appropriate approach to manage such resources in the coastal waters. And also many efforts and the approaches and methodologies have been tried. In the late 1990s, in line with the UN Convention and also the code, we started to focus on the issues such as like overfishing, and also we started to have an increased awareness of the responsibilities given to the countries with coastal waters. And then also robust system management system has been introduced. Basically, it is a TAC system, total allowable catch in short. That stands for total allowable catch. And this system has been introduced for 4 species in the beginning. And also there came the project of marine ranching area. We also focused on the artificial reef harvesting and also management thereof. This kind of a marine ranching area project, there has been other efforts along with it, as you can see at the bottom. In the 2000s, there have been many studies, especially in terms of the legal framework, with specific focus on the TAC system. Accordingly, Korea's fisheries resource management has been based on the act that was enacted. And that act is the Fishery Resources Management Act, and also sustainability has become the main goal for the resource management. Not just the marine ranch, but also underwater project has been carried out. As I said to you before, with the enactment of the Fisheries Resources Management Act, it was possible to have a more stronger and enhanced fisheries management system. So ecosystem-related information has been collected more proactively. Now moving on to the next slide. What we are doing in terms of the Fisheries Resource Survey. Our NIFS, the National Institute of Fisheries and Science, has been conducting a number of fisheries resources survey. We have 4 dedicated research vessels, and these 4 dedicated research vessels are implementing and conducting surveys throughout the coastal waters in Korea. And also not just the EEGs, but also the provisional measure zones between with our neighboring countries. These research vessels go out there to the provisional measure zones as well in order to conduct a study and also to collect information on key species and also to establish biological data of these key species. The population and the characteristics of fishery and all those data is being collected so that we can understand better about the food chain, especially in the EEZs, especially those fisheries that are living and habitating the coastal waters. We can have have a better understanding based on our research activities. As I explained before, we utilize these research vessels in order to conduct on-site survey, but we also utilize commercial fishing vessels to collect data. As you can see on this slide, this is how we conduct our stock assessment. Basically, if you look at the four top parts, these are what we need in order to conduct stock assessment. These are the key parameters, input parameters. With these input parameters, we can come up with the LVB growth parameters and the mortality data and total mortality and so on. And with based on those, we can calculate the maximum sustainable yield, in short MSY. And we utilize yield per recruit, in short YPR model, so that we can make needed estimations. And we also utilize spawning per recruit, in short SPR model, so that we can see the level of the spawning taking place in our coastal waters. And we can estimate the acceptable biological catches, ABC in short, and other calculations. As explained to you, with this kind of system in place, we have a database accumulated regarding 15 species, 15 species, so that we can finalize the acceptable biological catches and total allowable catches per year per each species. Now, moving on to the flow chart of the fisheries, how the fisheries management is taking place in Korea. As far as coastal waters is concerned, Ministry of Oceans and Fishery is the competent authority. So the ministry, together with the local governments and local stakeholders, come together to talk about to develop a basic plan and basic master plan for fisheries management is established every 5 years. And then they have to come up with an implementation plan as a follow-up. And then the last step would be the scientific survey and an assessment along with the public announcement. Now, I'd like to introduce to you the policies in relation to fisheries management in Korea. This is limited to coastal waters. There are about like 4 key major policies. One is the closing season and length limitation. This is to limit the length and the quantity and the period of catching certain species. This is to protect the spawning stock and also immature fishes. Those are under protection. So this kind of policy is applied to 44 species. And as for the 41 species, we restricted the length and weight that can serve as the basis for deciding whether it will be possible to catch that species or not. And the next policy is related to the stock rebuilding plan. This is in order to prevent overfishing and to set an appropriate level within the fishes can the catch can be made. We applied this stock rebuilding plans to 4 species in 2006, but now the number increased to the 20 species. Now I will talk to you about the total allowable catch system. In short, we call it TAC system. based on discussions and consultations, we have introduced this TAC system to 12 species, two. Based on the research and assessment, we take stock of the fish stock, and we also estimate the acceptable biological catches, in short ABC, for 5 species. And then we allocate a TAC in consideration of socioeconomic factors. If you look at the image on the right, which is in Korean, this is as of the 2020 and 2021, the information letter regarding the TAC for 12 species. So for these 12 species, allocation is given in terms of the TAC. So this is how we manage the total allowable catch for these 12 special species. Now I will talk to you about the new paradigm for fisheries resources. I talked to you about the history, and we said to you that from 2010, we introduced the concept of ecosystem. Ecosystem service has become important as a concept from 2010. Korea has been using a number of models in order to make the ecosystem-based fisheries assessment. In short, we call it EBFA. EBFA is a Korea developed methodology and approach with the goals such as sustainability, happy quality, biodiversity, socioeconomy. And these 4 goals are the final objective of conducting this ecosystem-based fisheries assessment. Not only that, a number of other ecosystem approaches and models and methodologies are being utilized in order to take stock of the status of the environment, especially the ecosystem. Especially in Korea, ecosystem-based assessment and research efforts are being made a lot. And also another new trend is the engagement of consumers in all these efforts. Before in the past, the fisheries resource management has been led only by the government. However, only the government-led policies is very good in creating big changes and strong changes in a strong manner. However, there was an area for improvement, which is about understanding consumers better. That's why nowadays the new paradigm is to engage citizens and the public from the very beginning of developing fisheries resource policy direction and management direction. And we have a number of campaigns, promotional campaigns. And the consumer and public engagement is very critical because this shall be the public-led efforts, like a bottom-up approach, in order to make real changes to the fisheries resource management in Korea. This will be the end of the presentation in relation to the coastal waters, and the next presenter will talk to you about the distant or international waters.
I'm Eunjung Kim from Distant Water Fisheries Resource Divisions in NIFS. Until now, Dr. Park explained the fisheries management in Korean national water. And from now, I'm going to talk about Korean distant water fisheries and how the fisheries management work in areas beyond national jurisdictions by RFMOs. I would like to start with the content of my talk. First, I'm going to introduce the brief history of Korean distant water fisheries. Secondly, what is the regional fisheries management organizations. Third, how the stock assessment work in RFMOs. And fourth is how the fisheries and the biological informations are collected in distant water fisheries. And lastly, I want to introduce some Korean scientific research activity in RFMO convention areas. Since the very first distant water fisheries started by Ji Nam-ho in 1957, the Korean distant water fisheries expand to the oceans. In 1976, the catch record over 720,000 million ton by over 850 vessels, even though there were two oil crises. In 1980, exclusive economic zones was prescribed by UN Convention of the Law of the Sea, so the catchable area will decrease for Korean vessels. However, in 1990s, the catch and fish power start to increase again by Korean government promotions on the distant water fisheries and by the industry effort and also the development of the fishing devices. In early 2000, the UN Fish Stock Agreement took effect, so various RFMOs start to establish and start to manage fisheries in their convention area. Therefore, Korea became the member of those RFMOs. I'm going to talk about RFMOs again in a couple minutes. Currently, about 250 fishing vessels are operating outside of Korean national water. The characteristic of the distant water fisheries is using relatively limited fishing method and targeting on a specific species comparing to the fisheries in a Korean national water. In 2019, total catch from distant water by Korean vessel was about 520,000 metric tons, which is about 50% of the total catch in Korean water. In particular, the catch of the certain species such as tunas, squids, and Pacific sauri takes a big proportion for the domestic seafood demands. This map shows where the Korean fisheries occurs in the world oceans. Large catch by tuna, purseine, and longlines comes from the tropical Pacific and Indian Oceans. The orange and purple color indicate the troll and squid jigging fisheries in the Southwest Atlantic Oceans. Stick-headed net fishing boats are targeting on Pacific sauri in Northern Pacific, which is in green. As I mentioned earlier, RFMOs manage the fisheries in open oceans. RFMO, short for Regional Fisheries Management Organizations, are international body made up of countries that share the practical and finance interest in managing and conserving fish stock in their convention area. Currently, Korea is the member of 12 RFMO, including North Pacific Fisheries Commissions and Western Central Pacific Fisheries Commissions and more. They are usually focused on regulating fishing for particular species or group of the fish in their convention area. The RFMO indicate in this map in blue indicate the tuna-related RFMO, and the yellow indicate non-tuna RFMOs. This flowchart shows the common structure of RFMO and how it works. There are a Science Committee, Technical Compliance Committee, and Finance Administrations Committee, and it's under one commission. Each of them has their own work. Among them, the most important task is done by Scientific Committee. When the commission needs to make an important decision on the management, the recommendation by Scientific Committee take an important role. The Scientific Committee decide on a scientific agenda based on the commission's request, and the Scientific Committee form the working groups by theme. Member scientists and specialists work together in the working group to provide a recommendation based on scientific evidence. For those kind of scientific activities, member country need to collect and provide verified, accurate, and timely data. The most important task is to understanding the fish stock status by stock assessment. Stock assessment is a process of collecting, such as CPUE, length composition, mean size, analyzing using those informations, and reporting to the commission about the demographic information to determine the change in their abundance of fishery stock in response to the fishing. By the series of the process, the SC can make a science-based recommendation on the stock status to the commissions. Collecting verified, accurate, and timely data is important to reduce uncertainty of the stock assessment. Korea put much effort to collect the accurate data for many years. Therefore, Korea adopted the electronic reporting system since 2015 to collect the accurate and prompt fishing information. Since the system was adopted, 100% of the distant water fishing vessels report their catch information almost in real time. Also, we utilize a scientific observer program to collect the biological information from the vessel. In 2020, about 55 scientific observers dispatched to fishing vessels and observed almost 5,000 fishing days. Their tasks were including collecting biological data such as the length, sex, maturity stage, biological sampling, and also bycatch information. Lastly, we are conducting the research to provide the scientific evidence in RFMOSC, including CPU standardizations, ecological research on certain species, and genetic study on jumbo flying squid. Because the scientific contributions by members take an important role in RFMOs. From our effort on scientific activity from the distant water fisheries, Korea became the important member in many RFMOs and keep up the position as a big fishing nation. That's all from us.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Park, and your co-presenter for your nice presentation. I think we are running behind, and as there are so many questions in the chat box, I like to choose some of them. And if any more question you have, I like to write it in the chat box so that we can manage it properly. So I am going to ask the question, or you can read it, or which will be better. So I'm going to ask the question, and I'm going to read the question. How do you manage your distance water? The first question is from Mr. Nasir. In marine ranching, what species of fish, shrimp, or other fauna are ranged? If so, what would be the result?
Yes, and I think, Dr. Alim, because of lack of time, maybe you could read a few questions at a time, and then Dr. Park and Dr. Kim can respond.
Oh.
So there's another question here. How do we manage or distribute PAC among fishers or vessels? That's another question.
And the next question is, how do you manage or distribute the TSC among the fishers vessels? And the third one to Dr. Park, how many species have been brought under TSC system? And the fourth question, do you perform monitoring and assessment of stock and catch water only in the only fish species or other aquatic fauna? And fifth question, there are so many questions. How artificial
we
reef?
have to stop here.
Yes, I think already 4 questions already raised, and after answering this, I will raise next question.
Still, you have another question.
Yes. And if any more question, I like to request our participants to write it in the chat box.
Sir, we are already saturated in questions, so.
Yeah, so what we're going to do is we're going to collect all the questions and we'll share it with NIFS. So Dr. Sharfeld and I will work with you to make sure they get it, to see if we can have a continuation. But for now, Dr. Kim and Dr. Park, do you want to respond to some of the questions? 질문이 안 갔나요? 아니면 어려운 질문인가요? 혹시?
일단 그 전에 지금 질문하신 거 조금 정리가 필요한 것 같은데요.
I think I need some time to organize the questions, and questions are related to the marine ranch. I need a clarification, and another question was how the TAC is allocated, and the species that are under the application of the TAC system. And also another question was how the species or other marine fauna is also under the management. These are the 4 questions that I got from the chat box. I will first talk about the TAC allocation, how it is allocated. As I said to you before, I think I can answer all these 3 questions related to TAC. Please bear with me. You can see my screen, right?
Yes, yes, we can see.
So as you can see, we applied this TAC system to 12 species, 14 population as of now. So we only focused on 12 species, not other marine fauna is not included under this TAC system. And as explained at the outset, we have a stock assessment system, and we calculate the acceptable biological catch ABC so that we can come up with the TAC. We also have to consider other socioeconomic factors when we decide the TAC so that we can set the right total allowable catch. And in case of Korea, the TAC is based on the coastal waters. So we allocate the TAC by the fleet, not by fishermen, but by fleet. We do allocate the TAC by fleet. And we do not get involved in the allocation, but rather the local government and the Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries make a decision to allocate the TAC. So what we do at NIFS is to calculate the acceptable biological catches so that the TAC can be calculated. So other factors would be considered by the Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries and the local governments to make the final allocation. Would this answer the questions related to TAC? I think I missed one thing. Monitoring on the catch. Basically, in Korea, we monitor the catch through the National Federation of Fisheries Cooperatives, 수협 in short. So by species, we get the catch information and we receive such information to conduct our assessment.
We can't hear anything all of a sudden. I don't know what happened.
네, 그리고 아까 첫 번째
And
질문하셨던
also the first question
바다 목장
about the
관련해가지고는
marine ranching.
한 번 더 질문을 해주시겠습니까?
Maybe I will try to translate the question one more time for the presenters. Would it be okay?
Yes.
I guess the Korean translation, they are not getting the sound of the Korean translation.
그러면은 제가 한국말로 한번 해볼까요?
Yes, I don't know why, but
Dr.
they are not getting the translation.
Dr. Lim, can you ask the ocean question again? What was the marine question?
First question
No,
was
the marine question. I think it was something about
Yes.
the marine.
yes,
Please.
the first question was in marine ranching, what species of fish or shrimp or other faunas are enhanced? If so, what would be the result?
Okay, so I think Dr. Kim covered some of this, but 그 NIFS에 있는 박사님들은 들리세요?
이 바다 목장
네,
관련해서
바다 목장.
답변 드리겠습니다. 바다 목장
Yes, let me take the question. As I said to you, the marine ranch is located in a specific area in an artificial manner so that we can nurture and rear the specific species. And the reason that we are doing it is because in coastal waters, we looked at specific species, target species, like a fullock, the settling fish that only habit in that specific area of coastal waters that do not go anywhere. So we target such species to be enhanced in our ranch marine ranch. So it's nowadays it's not like a large scale marine ranching project, but it's a rather small scale marine ranching that is being promoted. And that is in order to increase the population of the species under the management at the marine ranching. We help them grow well and healthy, so that they can increase the population. It is not exactly the same as the aquaculture, but it is about restoring the certain species, rebuilding the certain fish stock. So what is the outcome, the actual outcome out of it? There is one marine ranch in Chungnyang, located in the representative coastal water. We had a marine ranch project on Polak, and we conducted a number of projects. And back then, when we conducted this project, we did lots of underwater activities. Also research activities related to the underwater ecosystem. And with the stock rebuilding, we were able to see increased production volume as well of that specific species under the management of the marine ranching.